Radiation therapy is one of the most powerful weapons in the cancer-fighting arsenal, precise, potent, and often life-saving. But while it does an excellent job of targeting tumors, it's not always so discerning when it comes to the surrounding healthy tissue. Long after the final treatment session, the radiation-induced damage lingers, not in the form of tumors, but as clusters of stubborn, dysfunctional cells that refuse to die. Welcome to the world of radiation-induced senescence, a lesser-known but increasingly important frontier in survivorship medicine. These so-called zombie cells may not come back with a vengeance like the original cancer, but they can quietly undermine tissue integrity, accelerate aging, and contribute to a range of long-term side effects, from fibrosis and chronic fatigue to organ dysfunction and even secondary cancers. What makes radiation so uniquely capable of inducing senescence? It's a double-edged tool that causes acute DNA damage, especially double-strand breaks, triggering a robust cellular response. For rapidly dividing tumor cells, this often leads to apoptosis. But for normal, slower-dividing cells, fibroblasts, endothelial cells, epithelial support cells, the more common outcome is cellular senescence. These cells enter a state of permanent arrest, refusing to divide but remaining metabolically active and, quite often, pro-inflammatory. It's like hitting pause on a malfunctioning machine and then forgetting it's still plugged in and sparking. But not all senescent cells are created equal. Recent studies using single-cell transcriptomics and machine learning have revealed distinct subtypes of senescence induced by radiation. Some populations are classic SASP producers, flooding the local environment with IL-6, IL-8, and matrix metalloproteinases, which in turn recruit immune cells and degrade surrounding tissue. Others are more stealthy, low SESB subtypes that linger quietly, avoiding immune clearance while slowly sabotaging structural integrity. In organs like the lungs, liver, or bone marrow, this cellular residue can lead to chronic fibrosis, impaired regeneration, and, paradoxically, a higher risk of new cancers due to inflammatory signaling that destabilizes nearby genomes. So, how do we clean up the mess? Enter xenotherapeutics. The idea isn't just to blast away senescent cells indiscriminately. That could do more harm than good, especially if some of those cells are performing protective roles. Instead, researchers are exploring highly selective strategies to remove the worst offenders while preserving tissue architecture. For instance, senolytic drugs like navitoclax or Physidin have shown promise in animal models, especially when used shortly after radiation exposure to prevent the accumulation of chronic senescent populations. The key here is timing. Strike too early and you risk damaging cells that were on the cusp of repair. Wait too long and the senescent network becomes entrenched, harder to target, and more prone to self-reinforcing inflammation. Newer, more nuanced approaches are emerging. Some researchers are exploring xenomorphic agents, drugs that don't kill senescent cells but instead modify their behavior, reducing SESB secretion without compromising tissue stability. Others are investigating tissue-specific delivery platforms, like nanoparticle-encapsulated senolytics that home in on irradiated zones, guided by surface markers or microenvironmental cues. Imagine a cleanup crew that only goes to the neighborhoods that were bombed, not the rest of the city. One particularly promising strategy uses real-time imaging combined with AI-powered analysis to monitor post-radiation senescence dynamics in individual patients. With enough data, these tools could eventually identify senescence risk profiles based on radiation dose, tissue type, and individual genetics. A patient treated for breast cancer with chest irradiation might get a very different xenotherapeutic follow-up than someone treated for a brain tumor, not just because of anatomical differences, but because the cellular response and the senescent subtypes it produces can vary widely. There's also an exciting feedback loop with regenerative medicine. Stem cell therapies and tissue scaffolds are being investigated as ways to repair damage left behind by radiation, but their success depends heavily on the local cellular environment. Flood a new stem cell graft into a tissue full of senescent cells and SASB signals, and you're basically asking it to grow in toxic soil. By pre-clearing the most harmful senescent subtypes, we may be able to prime the tissue for better regeneration, better function, and, ultimately, a better life after cancer. Cancer survivorship is no longer just about getting through treatment. It's about reclaiming health afterward. As more people live longer after diagnosis, the long tail of radiation-induced senescence will become increasingly visible. Fatigue that never lifts, scars that thicken and spread,
organs that don't bounce back.
These aren't side effects. They're signs of an unresolved cellular detour. And now that we're learning how to read those signs, we might finally be able to do something about them. Radiation saved the life, but senescence keeps knocking on the door. The good news? We're getting better at telling which of those knockers needs to be let in and which one should be shown out, quickly, gently, and with surgical precision.